Hi, I'm Rachel, and welcome to my August 2020 page 112 tag. The page 112 tag was started by Sean the Book Maniac based off of a French prize where for one of the rounds they judged the books in the contest solely based on the quality of the writing on page 112. I've been using this tag several months in this year as a way to clear my unread physical books that, tend to accumulate without me noticing otherwise. I have all the titles that I've acquired in 2019 or before in this handy-dandy Books and Cats mug, and I will go and pick 3 from inside, then go grab them, read page 112, and add the one that I think is the strongest to my August TBR. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to go for book number 1, trying to sort of dig in deep because I think some of my older books are kind of lower down. Talking as though they're actually in here, like this is Mary Poppins's bag or something. Okay. Book number 1. The Genius of Judaism by Bernard Henri Levy. So I was completely wrong on that. I think, honestly, I guess my years are starting to blur together by this point. My mother got this for me maybe 2 years ago, actually. It is a nonfiction book about Judaism. Then for book number 2, also, I guess, dig low. Book number 2 is Holding My Breath by Sidora Ludwig, which I do believe I got a couple of years ago by this point. I picked it up on random chance at my library's used bookstore. Usually I try to be really strict with myself and only acquire books that I already have on my TBR of interested titles. But this one just sort of snuck up on me and it sounded interesting. It's about Jewish culture in rural Canada, I believe, so could be my cup of tea. And finally, for book number 3, Strangers and Cousins by Leah Hager Cohen. So that completely negates my point because I'm sure that was a 2019 book that I got out of a little free library in November, I think. This is recently published family drama / Jewish fiction. It's a personal wheelhouse and it might appeal to me. So I'll be back in just a little while to read my page 112s and give my thoughts on them. And I'm back with my books and now have to talk about them. So I'll start with number 1. This is The Genius of Judaism by Bernard Henri Levy. The first nonfiction book, or I guess non-memoir type book that I've had for this project. And the truth is I already ran into problems with this because there is no page 112 in this book. There's a chapter that ends on page 111 with like a half page, and then there's like a part 2 page, and then chapter 6 begins on page 115. So I'm cheating, but I feel like, especially since this is nonfiction, maybe I should use different rules, maybe, and read from this page. So here we go. Chapter 6. What does it mean to be a chosen people? But now the heart of the matter, the question that I have been circling from the start of this book, the one that comes to mind as soon as anyone mentions, today no less than yesterday, in the time of Sartre and Foucault as much as the time of Chateaubriand. Just a quick aside to say I went ahead and I wrote out the phonetics for the French, surnames, and I'm sure I still kind of stumbled a bit, so I apologize, but anyway. The matter of the name Jew. That scandalous, almost scabrous word on which, since Jews have been Jews, their misunderstanding with the nations hangs. The word is election, the Jews' status as a chosen people. And that is where we must begin, provided that we can strip the idea of the load of prejudice, bad literature, and stupidity that has weighed it down over time. The scene. We have to go back to the verse, the first, the one where the whole story starts with its knot of misapprehensions that will poison 20 centuries of relations with Christianity and 14 with Islam, but that has its own share of truth. We are in Exodus. The Israelites, having left Rephidim, are still far from the Promised Land. They find themselves in the middle of the desert, in a spot so empty it is almost abstract, the exact opposite of the Egypt they have just left. To judge from the end of Genesis is the very definition of fertility, prosperity, and culture. Okay, so, well, as I was reading this for a second time, I appreciated his sort of quick, to-the-point sentences. I don't know, maybe it's a little snobbish, but it also, brings the reader's attention into a highly theoretical conversation. I also feel like I'm judging this book based on the bad assumption, because I know this is page 112, I know we're in the middle of the story, as it were, and I know all of this might have meant more to me if I had all that backing of the past 5 chapters. But I have personal bias against all those French names he had to throw at us, all those, old philosophers, without any context. Maybe even how he had to center on, the 20 centuries with Christianity and the 14 with Islam. Although I get it, because he's trying to say how long anti-Semitism or anti-Judaism has been around, which really, in our understanding of it, began with the start of Christendom, and how they, to separate themselves from the Jews, had to, talk about blood libel and killing Jesus and, murder us over it for the next 1,000 or so years. And that was the start of it, but still, I guess the language is a little sweeping. And we are in Exodus? Meh. I guess, to be fair, he might have the time to prove that point after where I stopped on the page. So there we have it. A conundrum, perhaps. I do think it's compelling writing, but it's difficult for me to get interested in nonfiction and media res. I feel like I really, especially for something like this, which is so theoretical, need that backing of what came before it. With the next book, number 2, Holding My Breath by Sadora Ludwig, I return to novels, which is my sweet spot and what I mostly read, so let's see how it goes. We're starting in the middle of a sentence, as is usually the case, so I'll try to make do with what I can here. Oh, Beth, she's only 11. You know what that age is like. Yes, they'd all laugh. We remember. One woman, with a daughter in her teens, would put her hand on my mother's arm and say, "Don't worry, Goldie, she'll come into her own." And then there's a break. Sometime around then, before the weather turned cold, I started crawling out of my window at night and sitting on the wide, flat ledge of the roof beneath my windowsill. I watched the stars and learned their patterns, drawing my own sketches with a marker and flashlight. I could find Andromeda and Cassiopeia, the teapot and the Milky Way. All of our world's finest stories were illustrated up in the sky. Sometimes I made up my own constellations. I even named one Romeo and another Juliet, and found they were reaching for each other. I wrote an essay for my English class about the mythology of the night sky, for which I got an A. When I brought it home, my mother's face lit up right through her eyes. She positively sparkled. "Beth, this is wonderful." And then the words I hadn't realized I longed to hear, "I am so proud of you." She didn't actually read the essay. The mark was all that counted. She took the report and went immediately to call the women in the Monday group, even before she called my father at the pharmacy. She called each and every one of them, almost breathless. "Just listen to what Beth's teacher said on her report," I heard her say over and over again. "A very mature look at a complicated, impressive subject. Your writing is well beyond your years." Well beyond her years! She's so modest, we had no idea how talented she was. I'm having second thoughts about this passage as well, the second time reading it. It is sticking out to me a lot more than it did. I do think part of it is personal affiliation, because I know what it's like to be that age, when your mother basically sees you as an alien, and you're just trying to find your own way in a world that feels alien. I can understand a world where the night sky is the thing that seems the most familiar or the most fascinating. And I also appreciate that dichotomy between how I guess our protagonist Beth viewed the paper versus her mother, whereas Beth, was into her own ideas and wanted validation for those, and her mother just saw the grade, really, and so I have personal affiliation with that as well. And I think the writing was good, kind of crisp and to the point when it covered several topics on that one page. And I felt like we could really keep up with it, starting with the mother having, teenage angst about her daughter, and then the daughter going up to the roof with the constellations, and it inspiring her homework, and then the homework leading to her mother, attempting to find common ground with her. I think it flowed really nicely, so I'd say this is a contender. But finally, I have to go to book number 3, Strangers and Cousins by Leah Hager Cohen. Once again, starting in the middle of a sentence, so I'll just go with the dialogue. It was considered impolite to talk about religion at social gatherings. Where is your mother? Mantha leans again toward Ellerby, as if the answer might be whispered in confidence. For a moment, Ellerby appears frozen. Then she sets down her fork, picks up her invisible camera, and snaps a photo of Mantha, who blinks just as if a real flash had gone off. In my day, continues Aunt Glad, it was considered impolite to ask any questions of a personal nature at the dinner table. What? Mantha appeals to the table at large. I just wanted to know where her mother is. Mantha. Benny's voice is a shot fired across the bow. What? What's personal about that? Your shirt, Benny says, her voice dangerously stripped of inflection, is in your ketchup. Snorts of laughter from Tom. Mantha whacks him with her cast. Hey! Tom massages his shoulder extravagantly. Did you see what she did? Mantha, leave the table. Me? Why me? Tom sticks a finger in each ear. Dude, you trying to torture the entire canine population of Rundle Junction? Mantha scrapes her chair back violently. Why don't you ask him what he's been doing all afternoon? The pause that follows is interesting. Mantha's outcry had been a wild shot, but from the ruddy splotches reestablishing themselves on Tom's cheeks, it seems she might have struck upon something. All 3 young ladies stop their gabbing. Lloyd, for the first time all evening, attends with curiosity to the conversation. Ellerby angles her invisible camera at Tom. Pym looks up from his battle of vegetables. Aunt Glad, like the last person to realize the others have stopped passing cards in a game of spoons, looks around the table and emits a little sound, something between a cough and an oh. See, I really like this one too, and again, for somewhat biased reasons, I love family drama at the dinner table. And coincidentally, I think it's some of my own personal strongest writing. And I like this too. I think that the dialogue was pretty crisp and back and forth. There seems to be some tension around someone's mother character that presumably we'd know more about from the last 112 pages. But the real meat of something we can hook onto here is Mantha and Tom sort of flinging insults at each other to see like who will get in the most trouble. And then we have the Aunt Glad character, the snippy old aunt, it seems like, talking about in my day, things were more civilized. So, it's all a bunch of fun, and it moved really well. That being said, maybe I'm coming down on the ending being a little clunky. Like, we have to talk about what every person at the table is reacting to when Mantha turns the tables on Tom. Perhaps I would have liked it more, of course, if I knew who any of these people were, but... even as it stands, it kind of breaks the tension a little bit. I don't know, maybe it should, because you can't really just be stuck in all that dialogue all the time. We have to remember the scene around them. But there also just seemed to be a little too much of it, like, we get the point already. Maybe that's where I'm coming down on this, especially since I have to, choose between these 2 books after all, which writing I think is stronger. And I think it's close. But I ultimately think I'm going to go with this one, with Holding My Breath by Sadora Ludwig. I want to see where Beth's relationship goes with her mother. So that about covers it for me now. You can find Goodreads links for all of the books I mentioned listed down below. I'll also have links to previous page 112 activities on this channel, and I do a special shout out at the end of these videos. The predominantly YA BookTube has been getting involved in what they call TBR games as ways to add spontaneity into their own reading, which is kind of what I'm trying to do for this page 112 tag. I mean, yeah, it also gets some books off my shelves, but it's exciting to pick one book sort of on the cuff at random to add to my list, rather than just have a long list of books that I decided a while ago I wanted to read this month. But anyway, these TBR games, the videos I've been watching, have been far more involved. And the one I think I'll highlight this month is Litland from the Lit Reviews channel. It's, I think, vaguely based off of Candyland, but she made her board entirely on her own. I think she used some old pages of books as the backdrop, and she has little sections along the skittering paths for various genres. And the point of the game is once she gets all the way through her path, she gets to the end, and then she gets to do a book haul and buy some books for herself. So that's a really understandable goal, I think. So anyway, I'll link to her playlist down below. And I'll be back in a few days for my Friday Reads video, now that I've gotten my TBR squared away. Gotta get back to reading. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.